Okay, now we're in our review, we're going to look at problems 11 through 12 and see what these answers will be. In problem number 11, we're comparing bales of hay to every 5 days. And this time it's asking me to go to 31 days, so that's what I'm comparing. So in my labels out here, I'm going to put bales and days. I'm going to put 2 bales for every 5 days. This box right here is just telling me that if I need to find a base, that I can use this and base and reduce it down. But really, this is my base, so we're going to just label him my base and use that information. It's telling me I'm going to 31 days. And I'm thinking of every math fact that's possible to get to 31, and I can't think of one. But then I notice up in my question, it says about how many. So I'm going to get close. I'm going to do like a guess and check and go, what can I multiply by 5 to get close to 31? The first thing that pops into mind is 6, but 5 times 6 is 30. If I used 6 as my guess and check and say times 6, I would then get a 12, and that is an about number. If I went over and said times 7, then I would actually have 35. If I did times 7, then I would have 14. So now I need to make a good decision. Which one is representing the bales of hay from 2 to 5 to about 31 days? And my best estimate is going to be between 12 and 14. There is no number between, so I'm going to go to the closest one, which is 12. And number 12, we are looking at our 5 yards of trim and making this tablecloth. And it tells me a little scale down here. It's 1 yard is 36 inches. So I'm just looking for how many inches of trim that I would need to buy, because I want to scale it up from yards to inches. So I have 1 yard is the same as 36 inches. So I'm going to build my table and say, but I have 5 yards. Notice I did this table on purpose, this direction, because I can either look and say I'm going to multiply by 3 to go from yards to inches. And let's put in here a 36 instead of a 3 because I left out my 6. And we get 36 because right here I would have to multiply by 36. So I would multiply by 36. Or I can look and go down and say I can multiply by 5. So there's really 2 ways to look at this problem. Whichever way you want to. You might have even done a different type of a table and turned it. Remember, I can turn my paper and see my table another way. So just remember that there's always more than one way to solve it. But we're looking for 5 yards and how many inches. Obviously, it's going to be more than 36, so I'm going to mark out the 12. If I just multiply this by 2, that would be 2 yards. It would still be more than 60. I'm going to mark it out. So now I'm looking at my last choice, and I'm going to do the math here, and I'm going to say multiply by 5. And 36 is multiplied by 5. We do get 180, and we are talking about our inches. So I used a process of elimination to help me out and narrow it down, and then I tested it using my math and my ratio table. Now let's flip it over to problem number 13. In problem number 13, we're looking and comparing our survey of students. Every 3 students and 8 students. 3 out of the 8 would buy their lunch. So we're talking about lunch buyers to total. So my ratio is a 3 to 8. But it's telling me here, if I had 304 7th graders total, then I want to know how many lunch buyers. So there I set up my proportion, and I could put an x, but let's solve for x. So I'm going to look for a ratio and a scale factor to get from 8 to 304. That's not a math fact to me. So I might have to do some side work and actually figure out what that scale factor might be. If I come over here and work backwards, I'm going from 304 and finding out how many groups of 8 are in the 304. When I do that math, I actually figure out that there are 38. But you have to remember that this 38 is not the answer to x, it's the answer to my scale factor. So I want to multiply by 38, and I'm going to multiply by 38. When I do that, then I say 3 times 38. So here I'm doing some more side work because it's not a math fact. 38 times 3, 3 times 8 is 24, and carry, and 3 times 3 is 9, plus 2 more is 11. So we get 114 students will actually be buying their lunch compared to the 304 students. In number 14, we're looking at a scale again of centimeters to miles. I do not have to have my reference materials because we're just going to scale this. I am comparing centimeters to miles, and it's telling me my scale is 2 to 100. Now it's telling me on my map that to go to Lubbock, it's going to be 8 centimeters. So I want to scale it up times 4, so I'm going to scale it up times 4, and we would end up going 400 miles according to the map. Problem number 15. We are comparing 100 students in a class, and we have 12 boys and 8 girls. We want to know which would be an equivalent ratio. So I am comparing boys to girls. My boys' number is 12, my girls' number is 8, and it's telling me that I have 100 students. So I need to add a total column to my ratio table. So my total column, when I add my boys and girls up here, is 20. But it's telling me that I am actually having 100 students in the class. So I'm looking at scaling up and multiplying by 5. If I multiply by 5 here, I multiply by 5 here, and I multiply by 5 for the boys. So 12 times 5 is 60. 8 times 5 is 40. So my ratio would be 60 to 40 if there's 100. But when I look at my answers, I don't see it. So what is it asking me? It's actually asking me to just simply reduce it. So even though this 100 and I used it, it's really extra information when I come over here and look at my answers. So if I reduce this and found a base and made it smaller, let's see if that then becomes one of my answers. So if I reduce this down and divide by 4, I would get 3. If I reduce this down and divide by 4, I would get 2. Do I see an answer now? Well, I see a 3 and a 2, but are they comparing boys to girls? And no, it doesn't. Even this one, I see the 12 and the 8, but is it boys to girls? No. So how are we getting 9 to 6? What can I do to my base to build it back up? I'm going to come over here and build my table back up and say, I want a 9 here. What can I multiply by? 3. 2 times 3, I would get 9 to 6. Do we have 9 boys to 6 girls? So here now C is my best answer. So even though this problem gave me extra information up here and it compared boys to girls, it really was just wanting this equivalent word, which didn't tell me to scale up or scale down, so I did both to find my best answer.